Blow Up Your Video is an album by Australian hard rock band AC/DC. It was the band's 10th internationally released studio album and the 11th to be released in Australia. First released in Europe and Australia on January 18, 1988, it was later released in the US on February 1, 1988. The album was recorded at the Miraval Studio in Laval, France, in between August and September 1987, with all songs written by Malcolm Young, Angus Young and Brian Johnson. The album was re-released in 2003 as part of the AC/DC Remasters series. Recording, writing sessions for Blow Up Your Video took place in London's Nomis Studio in July 1987, with the band convening at Miraval Studio in Laval in Provence in the south of France in August and September, with Harry Vander and George Young, the production team behind the band's early albums. This was also the final studio album to feature drummer Simon Wright. In a 2008 Rolling Stone cover story, George Young admitted to David Fricke that the Blow Up Your Video session was when he realized his brother Malcolm, who had always been a heavy drinker, was in the grips of alcoholism. "I saw the signs. Malcolm had a problem. I said if he didn't get his act together, I was out of there. I don't recall it having any effect." The band recorded 16 tracks during the sessions, including the unreleased songs Let It Loose and Alright Tonight, as well as other versions of Heat Seeker and That's the Way I Wanna Rock 'n' Roll. 2 additional songs, Snake Eye and Borrowed Time, were recorded but only released on the 12-inch single versions of Heat Seeker and That's the Way I Wanna Rock 'n' Roll, respectively. Snake Eye was also included on the 3-inch CD single for Heat Seeker. The song Down on the Borderline was recorded, but not released until 1990, as the B-side of the Australian Money Talks single in 7-inch, 12-inch and CD single formats. All 3 of these songs were later included on backtracks in 2009. Demo tracks for the songs Let It Loose and Alright Tonight were stolen and bootlegged, so they were omitted from the final album cut. Although he wrote all the lyrics on the album, it would be the last on which Brian Johnson was credited as a songwriter. The title of the album was taken from a line in the song That's the Way I Wanna Rock 'n' Roll. In 1988, Angus explained the title to MTV Australia, "We were probably a band that's best seen in a live situation, and that's how the title came about. 'Cause everything's automatic these days. A kid can flick on the button on a TV, he's got a remote control and he can zoom through everything and get it coming in from all over the world. You can turn on your radio and get rock coming in from America. For us, the best thing as a band, it was always we were great on stage." Tour. The band began a world tour in Perth on February 22, playing 16 dates in Australia for the first time in 7 years. The band played 4 tracks from Blow Up Your Video on the tour: Heat Seeker, That's the Way I Wanna Rock 'n' Roll, Nick of Time, and Go Zone. On the eve of the North American leg of the tour, Malcolm Young decided not to participate in order to deal with a by now problematic alcohol addiction. Unlike Angus, who had always been a teetotaler, Malcolm enjoyed drinking, but in recent years it had escalated to the point where it began to affect performances. The band's former US agent Doug Thaler recalls seeing the band at one of the Monsters of Rock shows in 1984. "I'd gone into AC/DC's dressing room and had a scotch with Malcolm and Jono, Brian Johnson, while Motley Crue played. When AC/DC went out to take the stage, Malcolm had clearly had too much to drink. And they were playing the song that Angus used to do his guitar solo and strip to, and Malcolm would just barely keep a steady rhythm, he couldn't even do that. And he fell into the drum kit, and I thought, oh boy, this is not headed any place good." By April 1988, Young recognized he had a problem and, ever mindful of his former bandmate Bon Scott's premature passing, he began attending AA meetings, confessing to VH1's Behind the Music in 2000, "My drinking overtook my whole thing. I felt like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I had a talk with Angus. I was letting people down. I wasn't brain dead, but I was just physically and mentally screwed by the alcohol." Filling in for him was Malcolm and Angus' nephew, Stevie Young, although Malcolm was present on the rest of the tour and in the Blow Up Your Video promotional videos. Stevie would also step in for Malcolm in 2014 when it was disclosed that the guitarist was suffering from dementia. Reception: the album was the band's biggest-selling album of new material since For Those About to Rock We Salute You, being certified platinum in the US. Blow Up Your Video reached number 2 in the UK and number 12 in the US. The album was nominated for the Grammy Award for Best Hard Rock Metal Performance Vocal or Instrumental in 1989, but both bands infamously lost to Jethro Tull's Crest of a Knave. In the original Rolling Stone review, Jim Farber wrote, "Fortunately, the Young Brothers continue to come up with enough inspired riffs to make the tunnel vision justifiable. In fact, the riffs here add up to the band's catchiest work since its classic album Back in Black." Greg Prato of AllMusic calls the album unfocused, and glutted with such throwaways as Kissin' Dynamite. Track listing: all songs written and composed by Malcolm Young, Angus Young and Brian Johnson. 2 additional songs, Snake Eye, and Borrowed Time, were recorded but only released on the 12-inch single versions of Heat Seeker, and That's the Way I Wanna Rock 'N' Roll, respectively. Snake Eye was also included on the 3-inch CD single for Heat Seeker. The song Down on the Borderline was recorded, but not released until 1990, as the B-side of the Australian Money Talks single in 7-inch, 12-inch and CD single formats. All 3 of these songs were later included on backtracks in 2009. Demo tracks for the songs Let It Loose and Alright Tonight were stolen and bootlegged, and omitted from the final album cut. Personnel: Brian Johnson Euro-led vocals, Angus Young Euro-led guitar, Malcolm Young Euro rhythm guitar, backing vocals, Cliff Williams Euro bass guitar, backing vocals, Simon Wright Euro drums, percussion. Charts, album. Certification. References. External links, lyrics on AC/DC's official website.